Even now, as the room has gone quiet, you may notice that you are still carrying people with you, not their bodies, not their presence, but something softer and heavier at the same time, their words, their expectations, the tone of a conversation that never quite ended. You are lying down, yet part of you is still standing somewhere else, still listening, still responding, still adjusting yourself to fit the space between others. Tonight, there is no need to push that away. If people feel heavy right now, that does not mean something is wrong with you. It simply means you have been paying attention for a long time. Being considerate has weight, not because it is a flaw, but because it asks you to hold many things at once. You may notice familiar faces drifting through your mind, not sharply, more like silhouettes, the outline of someone you tried to understand, the feeling of choosing the right words, the quiet effort of not saying too much or saying just enough. None of this needs to be solved tonight. This is not the moment to replay what you could have said differently, not the moment to decide what you should do tomorrow. There is nothing you need to improve, clarify, or explain. For now, simply notice the weight. Notice how it sits in your body, perhaps behind the eyes, or across the shoulders, or as a gentle pressure in the chest. There is no need to name it precisely. Just acknowledging that it is, there is enough. You have been holding space for others, holding conversations in your mind long after they ended, holding responsibility for feelings that were not entirely yours. Of course, that feels heavy. Anyone who listens deeply will recognize this feeling. Anyone who tries to be kind without making noise about it will know this quiet exhaustion. So tonight, let this be the starting point. Not release yet, not distance yet, just honesty. You're allowed to admit that people feel heavy sometimes, even people you care about, even people you respect, even people you love. This heaviness does not cancel your compassion. It simply means your mind has not had a chance to rest. There is nothing to correct here, no lesson hidden inside this moment, just the simple truth of carrying too much for too long. As you breathe in, you might notice that the breath feels shallow at first. That is normal. You have been breathing around others all day. You do not need to change it yet. Just notice the rhythm you arrived with, the way your body is already trying to slow things down without being told. The room does not ask anything of you. The darkness does not expect a response. There is no conversation waiting for your reply. Even if your mind continues to bring people forward, let them appear without engagement. You do not need to follow the thread. You do not need to finish the thought. They can be there, and you can remain here. Right now, the only task is resting in this moment exactly as it is. Heavy is allowed. Tired is allowed. Still thinking is allowed. Nothing is being judged. As the night holds you, you can begin to sense that there is time, no urgency, no deadline for letting go. That will come later, gently, on its own. For now, let yourself stay exactly where you are, still carrying everyone, and finally, not needing to do anything about it. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from being considerate for too long. Not the tiredness of doing too much, but the tiredness of noticing everything, the pause before you speak, the tone you choose so no one feels uncomfortable, the way you quietly adjust yourself so the room stays calm. This kind of effort rarely looks dramatic. From the outside, it can look like nothing at all, but inside, it accumulates. You may notice that much of the weight you feel tonight did not come from conflict, but from restraint, holding back words that might have been honest, softening thoughts that might have been clear, smoothing the edges of yourself so others would not have to. There is nothing wrong with being thoughtful. There's nothing wrong with caring how others feel, but even kindness has mass, and when it is carried without rest, it presses inward. You might remember moments from today that did not seem important at the time. A message you rewrote before sending, a response you delayed, trying to find the right balance, a feeling you swallowed because it felt inconvenient. Individually, these moments are small, almost invisible. Together, they form the heaviness you brought into the night. You did not choose this because you are weak. You chose it because you are attentive. People who are not paying attention do not feel this weight. They pass through conversations without absorbing them. They leave rooms without carrying echoes, but you tend to notice the undercurrent, the shift in mood, the unspoken expectation. That sensitivity can feel like a strength during the day. At night, it becomes something else. As you lie here now, you might feel a subtle tension in your body, not sharp, just present. It may feel like your shoulders never fully dropped, like your jaw is still gently holding something in place. Like your breath learned to stay polite. You do not need to correct any of this. There is no instruction here to relax, no request to change. Simply noticing is enough. Consider how often you tried to make things easier for others. Not because you were asked, but because you sensed it might help. You anticipated needs before they were spoken. You filled gaps quietly. You kept the flow moving. And now, in the quiet, there is no one to adjust for, no tone to manage, no reaction to predict. Yet your body has not caught up with that reality. That is understandable. When consideration becomes a habit, it does not turn off instantly. It lingers, like a posture you held all day, without realizing how tense it was. Tonight, you are not asked to stop caring. You are not asked to become distant or cold. You are simply allowed to recognize that being considerate took something from you. It cost energy. It required attention. It asked you to be slightly elsewhere again and again. That cost deserves acknowledgement. You might notice a quiet sadness mixed into the heaviness, not grief, just the feeling of having set yourself aside too often. This is not a judgment, it is an observation, and observations, when left alone, begin to soften on their own. As you breathe, you may feel the breath deepen slightly, not because you forced it, but because nothing is demanding it stay shallow anymore. There is no audience here, no expectation of performance. The night does not need you to be considerate. It does not require a softened version of you. It allows you to exist without adjustment. If your mind returns to moments of politeness, of choosing harmony over honesty, let them pass without commentary. You do not need to decide whether you did the right thing. That question belongs to daylight. Here, there is only the recognition that carrying consideration for too long creates weight, and weight, when noticed, does not need to be carried much longer. You are not required to put it down yet. Just knowing what it is already begins to change how it sits inside you. In this quiet space, you can allow the effort to be seen without being continued. The body understands this language. It knows when something no longer needs to be held. Even if the mind still circles, the body has started to listen. There is nothing else to do right now, no improvement to make, no balance to restore, only this moment where the weight of being considerate is finally acknowledged and allowed to rest beside you instead of inside you. There is a quiet relief in realizing that nothing needs to be resolved tonight. No conversation needs to be completed. No misunderstanding needs to be cleared. No explanation needs to be prepared in advance. The mind often believes that rest must be earned after things are settled, after questions are answered, after emotions are organized into something tidy. But tonight does not ask for that. Tonight asks for nothing at all. If your thoughts keep returning to unfinished moments, let them arrive without resistance. A sentence you did not send, a feeling you did not express, a reaction you are still imagining. These are not problems in need of immediate attention. They are simply signs that your mind has been working for a long time. You do not have to carry them forward right now. There is a difference between postponing something and abandoning it. Tonight, you are only postponing, gently, without consequence. Whatever needs care will still exist tomorrow, unchanged by this pause. You are not avoiding responsibility. You are allowing your nervous system to rest before it continues. Notice how the body responds when it hears that nothing must be decided. There may be a small loosening, almost imperceptible, a softening in places that were braced for action. You might feel the urge to review, to double-check, to replay a situation one more time just to make sure you understand it. That habit comes from a good place. It comes from wanting things to be right. But tonight does not require rightness. It requires only stillness. Understanding can wait. Clarity can wait. Even closure can wait. None of these are urgent in the dark. The night is not a time for resolution. It is a time for suspension, a space where things are allowed to remain open without causing harm. You do not need to tie loose ends before sleeping. Loose ends do not unravel in the night. They simply rest where they are. If the mind insists on finding meaning, let it tire itself out. You do not need to participate. Thoughts may circle familiar questions. What should I have said? What will happen next? Did I do enough? These questions do not need answers now. They are not invitations. They are echoes, and echoes fade when there is no one speaking back. You may notice that as you stop responding internally, the thoughts slow, not disappear, just lose their urgency. They begin to feel distant, like voices in another room. You are allowed to leave them there. Nothing will break if you do. Rest does not interfere with responsibility. It supports it. A rested mind responds more clearly. A rested body knows when to act, but that belongs to another moment. Right now, there is only this quiet permission to pause all internal problem solving. No strategy, no preparation, no fixing, just this moment where your attention can soften because there is no demand placed on it. Even if part of you remains alert, scanning for something unfinished, let that part rest too. It does not need to guard anything tonight. The room is steady. The air is unchanged. Nothing is approaching that requires your response. You can let the night hold the unanswered questions without following them. They will not disappear, but they will lose their grip. As you continue to breathe, notice how the breath no longer rushes to keep up with thought. It moves at its own pace now, slow, unconcerned, uninterested in outcomes. There is nothing you need to reach tonight. No conclusion waiting at the end of this story. Only rest, arriving gradually as effort quietly steps aside. And as this permission settles in, you may begin to sense a subtle shift, not relief exactly, more like space. Space where nothing needs to be resolved, and therefore nothing needs to be carried forward. Distance does not always mean rejection. The mind often confuses the two, especially when you care. It assumes that stepping back must be an act of coldness, that silence must be interpreted as absence, that space must signal disinterest or withdrawal. But distance can also be something else. It can be a pause, a moment of recalibration, a way of allowing the air to move freely again. Tonight, you are not turning away from anyone. You are simply allowing yourself to step back from the constant closeness of other people's needs. There is a difference. Closeness requires attention. It asks you to notice, to respond, to adjust. Distance asks nothing at all, and that does not make it unkind. If you notice guilt arising at the idea of distance, let it be there without argument. Guilt often appears when you are used to being available, when you are accustomed to filling space, answering quickly, staying engaged even when you are tired. That habit can make rest feel like neglect. But rest is not neglect. You are not withdrawing love. You are not erasing connection. You are simply letting the space between you and others exist without tension. Imagine standing in a wide, open field. The people in your life are still there, some closer, some farther away. Nothing has been removed. No one has been pushed out. There is simply more room to breathe. Distance in this sense is not a wall. It is a horizon, a gentle expansion that allows perspective to return. You may notice that when distance is permitted, the body responds first. The shoulders drop a fraction. The jaw loosens without instruction. The breath no longer feels like it must stay alert. These are not signs of indifference. They are signs of safety. Safety does not require constant engagement. It allows for quiet. You do not owe continuous closeness to anyone, even to people you care deeply about. Closeness without rest becomes strain. Distance without fear becomes balance. Tonight, you are practicing the second. You are allowed to imagine a little more space between yourself and other people's expectations. Not a separation, as softness. Notice how this space feels. It may feel unfamiliar at first, like a room that has just been rearranged. Your mind may try to fill it quickly, bringing up concerns, explanations, justifications. There is no need to follow those. Distance does not require explanation. It does not need to be defended or announced. It simply exists. You can let the idea of distance settle without attaching a story to it. No one is being judged. No relationship is being evaluated. There is no decision being made. Just the recognition that space can be gentle. As you rest here, you may notice that thoughts of others begin to feel less immediate. Their faces are still recognizable but less defined. Their voices are still familiar but quieter. This is not forgetting, it is loosening. Distance allows the edges of things to soften naturally. You are not required to hold everyone close in order to care. Caring does not disappear when attention rests. It becomes lighter, less demanding, and tonight, lightness is enough. If a part of you worries that distance might change something, let that worry rest too. Change does not happen in the dark. The night is a place of suspension, not action. Nothing is being altered here. Nothing is being decided. You are simply stepping into a wider view where closeness and distance are no longer opposites. They are part of the same rhythm. In this rhythm, there is a time to engage and a time to step back. Right now is the second. As the night continues, you may find that the space you allowed begins to feel supportive, not empty, not lonely, just quiet enough to let the body rest in its own shape. Distance is not rejection, it is permission, permission to exist without constantly reaching outward. And as that permission settles, you may notice that rest no longer feels like something you must justify. It simply arrives in the space you allowed. As the night deepens, you may notice that faces begin to soften, not disappear, just lose their sharpness. The mind no longer holds them as clearly as before. Edges blur, details fade. You might still sense who they are, but their expressions are no longer fixed. Their features no longer demand attention. This is a natural shift. When effort steps back, the mind stops rendering everything in detail. Faces that felt vivid earlier begin to feel like impressions instead, a presence without definition, a shape without insistence. You do not need to make this happen. It occurs on its own when there is nothing left to respond to. You may notice that names feel less important now. Stories loosen their grip. The exact sequence of events no longer asks to be remembered. This is not forgetting, it is resting. The mind conserves energy by releasing unnecessary detail. As faces fade, so does the need to interpret them. You are no longer reading expressions, no longer anticipating reactions, no longer adjusting yourself in response. There is a quiet relief in that. Imagine faces as reflections on water. At first they are clear, recognizable, still. Then the surface shifts slightly, not enough to disturb the water, just enough to blur the image. The reflection is still there, but it no longer pulls you in. You can let it be. Voices follow the same path. What once sounded distinct becomes more distant. Tone softens. Words lose their urgency. You are no longer inside the conversation. You are no longer positioned to reply. The mind understands that no response is required. This distance is gentle. It does not push anything away. It simply allows attention to drift where it is no longer needed. You may notice that as faces and voices fade, your body settles more deeply. There is less to track, less to hold. The muscles no longer prepare for interaction. They return to stillness. This is not withdrawal. It is efficiency. The mind is doing what it does best at night, simplifying. You do not need to hold anyone clearly right now. No one needs to be remembered precisely in order for rest to happen. Relationships do not require attention every moment they exist. They can rest too. As images soften, they may blend into something more abstract, a sense of connection without form, a feeling without a face attached. This is enough. You are allowed to experience people as impressions rather than responsibilities. Nothing is lost in this transition. Care does not depend on clarity. Connection does not disappear when detail fades. It simply becomes quieter. Notice how the mind feels with fewer sharp images to process. There is more space between thoughts, more silence between impressions. The mind begins to move at the pace of the body instead of the pace of memory. If a face briefly returns with clarity, let it pass without engagement. There is no need to sharpen it again, no need to follow where it leads. Clarity belongs to waking hours. The night prefers softness. As the darkness holds you, faces become like distant lights, visible but no longer close enough to require focus. They remain where they are, and you remain where you are. There is no crossing between the two right now. This separation is calm. It does not ask anything of you. The mind knows how to do this when it feels safe, and right now nothing is asking for your attention. You can allow faces to remain unfocused, voices to remain indistinct. You are not being inattentive, you are being rested. As images fade, what remains is a quiet presence, not yours, not theirs, just the stillness of awareness with nothing specific to hold. And in that stillness, the body finds its own balance. Breathing slows without instruction. The night continues without interruption. There is no one to picture clearly now, no one to imagine closely, only rest, deepening naturally as faces fade, and the mind gently lets go of detail. There is something important you can allow yourself to hear tonight. You don't owe anyone anything right now. No response is required. No explanation is expected. No emotional labor is being requested. Even if it feels unfamiliar, this is true. During the day, you may carry an invisible sense of obligation, a readiness to reply, a responsibility to acknowledge, a quiet pressure to stay connected. That pressure does not disappear automatically at night. It lingers, but tonight it does not apply. You are not on call. You are not needed. You are not responsible for holding anything together. If the idea of owing nothing creates discomfort, let that discomfort be present. It often appears when you are used to being reliable, when others know you as someone who responds, who listens, who shows up. That identity can make rest feel undeserved, but rest is not a reward, it is a requirement. You do not need to earn it by finishing conversations or resolving feelings. Nothing bad happens when you pause your availability. Connections do not weaken because you rest, they stabilize. Tonight, you are allowed to step out of the role you usually play. You do not need to be understanding. You do not need to be supportive. You do not need to be kind in any visible way. Kindness does not disappear when it is quiet. It simply stops asking for energy. Notice how the body reacts when obligation loosens. There may be a subtle release, a sense of relief that does not ask to be explained. You are allowed to feel that relief without justifying it. There is no need to check whether someone might be waiting. No need to scan for unfinished responsibilities. The night does not keep score. You are not behind. You are not neglecting anything. You are resting. Even if your mind tries to list what you still owe, what you still should do, you can let those lists remain unfinished. They do not need your attention now. Obligation belongs to time. This moment is timeless. Here, nothing is being exchanged. You do not have to give. You do not have to receive. You can simply exist without being useful. That may feel strange at first. Usefulness often becomes a measure of worth, and when usefulness pauses, the mind looks for something else to hold, but there is nothing else required. Worth does not disappear when usefulness rests. You are allowed to be unproductive in your own inner world. No one needs access to you tonight. You are not closing doors. You are not sending signals. You are simply unavailable in the most neutral sense. Unavailable to demands, unavailable to expectations, unavailable to the need to respond. This unavailability is temporary, and it is safe. Nothing is harmed by it. As the body senses this permission, it begins to let go more deeply. Muscles soften without instruction. Breath slows without effort. The nervous system recognizes that it is no longer being monitored. There is nothing to manage here. If a part of you worries that stepping out might disappoint someone, let that worry rest too. Disappointment does not live in the dark. It lives in stories. Tonight there are no stories unfolding, only the steady presence of the night holding everything in suspension. You can let the idea of owing fade, not because it was wrong, but because it has completed its work for today. You have given enough. Now you are allowed to receive nothing and give nothing, just this quiet space where nothing is asked of you and nothing is expected. And in that space, rest deepens not as an achievement, but as a natural response to finally being off duty. There comes a moment when attention no longer needs to stay with people, not because they disappeared, but because your body is ready to come back to itself. Breathing begins to feel different here, not something you manage, not something you adjust, just something that happens without anyone else involved. All day, your breath may have moved around others, shallow when you listened, held when you waited, careful when you chose your words. Breathing learned to stay alert. Now there is no one to accommodate, no one to match, no one to respond to. The breath does not need to be polite anymore. You might notice that at first it does not know what to do with that freedom. It may hesitate, pause, change rhythm briefly. That is fine. The body remembers how to breathe when it is alone. You do not need to guide it. Let the breath come and go as it wants. There is no correct pace, no ideal depth, just the quiet movement of air entering and leaving a body that no longer has to stay ready. As attention settles on breathing, thoughts naturally move further away, not because you push them out, but because the body takes priority. Breath happens here, thought happens somewhere else. You do not need to follow both. Feel how the breath moves through your chest, your ribs, your abdomen, not with analysis, with sensation, air touching the inside of the body, warmth, movement, release. No one else is involved in this process. This breath is not shared, not monitored, not shaped for anyone. It belongs only to the body resting now. You may notice subtle changes. The space between breaths grows. The pause at the end of an exhale lasts a little longer. Nothing is being held. The body understands that it does not need to stay prepared. Preparedness dissolves when there is no audience. You can allow your awareness to rest lightly on breathing, like a hand placed gently without pressure. If attention drifts, let it drift. Breathing continues without it. You do not need to stay focused to benefit from this moment. The body does not require supervision. As breathing becomes quieter, other sensations may come forward. The weight of the blanket, the support beneath you, the stillness of the room, all of these exist without reference to anyone else. You are not being observed. You are not being evaluated. The body recognizes this absence and softens further. Muscles that were holding themselves upright begin to rest into gravity. The jaw releases, the forehead smooths, the tongue rests naturally, breathing flows through this softness without interruption. Nothing needs to be synchronized, nothing needs to be timed. Each breath arrives when it arrives, leaves when it leaves. The mind may try to comment, to notice, to label. You can let those comments pass. They are not required. Breathing does not need understanding. It continues perfectly without explanation. As the night deepens, you may notice that breathing is no longer something you are aware of all the time. It fades into the background. That is a sign of safety. When breathing becomes background, the body has taken over. You do not need to follow it any longer. Just let it happen on its own terms. There is no one else here inside this rhythm. Only a body, supported, unobserved, and finally allowed to breathe without anyone else. There is a quiet shift that happens when you realize there is no one to respond to, no message waiting, no expression to read, no moment that requires your reaction. This is not emptiness, it is relief. All day, part of your attention has been oriented outward, listening, interpreting, preparing to reply. Even when no one was speaking, that readiness remained. Now it is no longer needed. You may notice a subtle habit in the mind, the impulse to check, to see if something has changed, to make sure nothing requires you. You can let that impulse rise and fall without following it. Nothing appears, nothing asks for you. This absence of demand is not accidental. It is the natural state that returns when effort steps aside. No one is waiting on the other side of this moment. You are not being observed. You are not being anticipated. There is no social field to manage here. The mind begins to slow when it understands this fully, not because you tell it to, but because there is nothing for it to do, no one to reassure, no one to explain yourself to, no one to remain available for. Availability turns off quietly when it is no longer required. You might notice that your awareness begins to widen, not focusing on any single thing, just resting. Sounds become less distinct, thoughts less insistent. Even the sense of you softens slightly. There is no role to maintain. You are not a listener now, not a responder, not a presence for anyone else. You are simply here. This can feel unfamiliar. So much of identity is shaped by interaction. Who you are when someone needs you, who you are when someone speaks. Without that reference point, the mind may feel momentarily unsure. That uncertainty is safe. It does not need to be filled. In this space, nothing is missing. There is simply nothing being asked. Notice how the body responds to this understanding. The chest feels quieter, the belly less guarded. The breath continues but no longer feels connected to anticipation. You are not waiting for the next cue. There is no cue coming. Time stretches slightly here. Moments feel less segmented. There is no before and after, just this gentle continuity. Thoughts may still appear, but they no longer organize themselves around response. They drift, fragments without direction, words without urgency. You do not need to make sense of them. Sense-making belongs to conversation, and there is no conversation here. Silence does not need your input. It exists on its own. You may notice that silence is not truly silent. There are subtle sounds, ambient movement, the quiet presence of the room. None of these require acknowledgement. They pass through awareness without stopping. This is what it feels like when attention is no longer tethered, not pulled outward, not pulled inward, just floating gently, supported by nothing in particular. No one to respond to means no self to defend, no position to hold, no version of yourself to maintain. That effort dissolves without announcement. And, as it does, rest deepens, not because you tried, but because nothing interrupted it. You are allowed to remain in this state. No vigilance, no readiness, just the quiet recognition that there is no one to respond to and nothing that requires you to be anything other than still. There is a point where connections no longer need to be held, not broken, not rejected, just loosened. The difference matters. Breaking requires effort. Holding requires effort. Loosening happens when effort is no longer supplied. You do not need to decide which connections matter more or less tonight. You do not need to evaluate what should remain close and what should not. That kind of sorting belongs to another time. Here, connections are simply allowed to relax their grip. Imagine a knot that has been held tightly for a long time, not tied with intention, but tightened through use, pulled again and again without ever being examined. Now, without touching it, without working at it, the knot begins to soften, the fibers shift, space appears where there was none, nothing snaps, nothing is undone all at once. The knot does not disappear, it just stops resisting. This is how connections loosen when you stop holding them in place. All day, attention reinforced them. Thought by thought, reaction by reaction. Now attention is elsewhere, and without attention, the structure changes on its own. You may notice that the sense of connection feels less directional, no longer pulling you outward, no longer anchoring you to anyone. It exists, but without tension. This is not disconnection, it is neutrality, a state where relationship is not being actively maintained. In this state, nothing needs to be decided. You are not choosing distance. You are not choosing closeness. You are choosing nothing, and that choice requires no energy at all. Connections respond to this immediately. They stop asking, they stop leaning, they rest where they are. You may sense that thoughts of others feel lighter now, not absent, just unweighted. They pass through the mind without hooking into it. No emotional charge, no unfinished pull. They are present in the way weather is present, not personal, not demanding, just passing conditions. As connections loosen, the mind feels less structured, less organized around people. There is no longer a center that everything relates back to. This can feel strange. So much of mental life is relational. Who said what? Who needs what you should have done. Without that scaffolding, the mind becomes open. Open does not mean empty, it means unshaped. Thoughts arise without context, images without meaning. They do not connect to anything else. They dissolve where they appear. This is the mind without tension, holding it together. It is not broken, it is resting. Notice how the body responds as connections loosen further. There is less readiness in the muscles, less orientation in the chest. The body no longer leans forward or braces backward. It simply settles. Gravity becomes more noticeable when nothing pulls against it. The surface beneath you feels more supportive, not because it changed, but because nothing is competing with it. Connections are no longer louder than the body. They fade into the background where they belong for now. You are not abandoning anything. Nothing is being lost. Connections that matter do not require constant tension. They endure without effort. What loosens tonight will not disappear tomorrow. It will simply return in a gentler form. Right now, you are allowed to experience connection without responsibility, without maintenance, without vigilance, just as a quiet fact of existence. You are connected to others in the way stars are connected, by distance, by presence, by not touching. Nothing pulls, nothing collapses. Everything remains exactly where it is. And as the mind recognizes that nothing needs to be held together, it releases one more layer of effort. The effort to keep things aligned. The effort to keep meaning intact. Meaning can rest too. There is no narrative required in this space, no story to follow, only the sensation of connections loosening naturally, without instruction, without consequence. This loosening does not lead anywhere. It does not progress. It simply continues until the mind no longer notices it happening. And when that happens, rest deepens again, not dramatically, not suddenly, just quietly, as the last threads of tension stop asking to be held. There is a quiet simplicity that begins to settle in now, nothing to improve, nothing to correct, nothing to become, just existing. This is not a statement of worth. It is not reassurance. It is not encouragement. It is simply what remains when everything else has stepped away. For a long time, existence may have felt conditional. You exist in relation to others, in relation to expectations, in relation to what you offer or provide. Now, those references are gone. What remains does not ask to be defined. You are not required to feel useful. You are not required to feel meaningful. You do not need to feel calm or grateful or peaceful. You only need to exist. The body understands this without words. It does not ask what the point is. It does not evaluate whether this moment is enough. It simply continues. Breathing happens. Sensation happens. Rest happens. None of this requires intention. Notice how different this feels from trying to relax. Trying implies effort. Trying implies a goal. Here, there is no goal. If thoughts arise, they do not need to be addressed. They are not instructions. They are not signals. They are just movements passing through awareness. You do not have to follow them. You do not have to stop them. They are not interfering with anything. Existing does not require a clear mind. It does not require stillness. It does not require silence. It allows whatever is present to be present. Even restlessness belongs here. Even dullness belongs here. Nothing needs to change in order for this moment to be complete. Completion is not something you arrive at. It is something you stop reaching for. As effort continues to fade, you may notice that time feels less structured. Minutes no longer stack neatly. There is no sense of progress. This is not boredom. It is the absence of measurement. Without measurement, there's nothing to compare this moment to. It stands on its own. You may notice that the sense of I feels quieter now, not gone, just less central. There is experience, but no one narrating it. No commentary required, just sensation, breath, and the steady presence of being. You are not observing yourself. You are not monitoring your state. That effort has dissolved. What remains is simple awareness without direction. This kind of simplicity often feels unfamiliar. It does not offer feedback. It does not tell you how well you are doing. There is no signal of success, and yet nothing is missing. This is what the mind returns to when it is no longer occupied with becoming something else. Just existing is not passive. It is complete. You may notice that even the desire to sleep has softened. There is no urgency. Sleep does not need to be reached. It arrives when the body no longer needs to manage itself. And right now, nothing is being managed. You are not holding yourself together. You are not maintaining balance. Balance is happening on its own. The body is supported. The room is still. The night continues. There is no request coming from anywhere, no role waiting to be filled, just this quiet continuity of existence. If awareness fades in and out, that is fine. Nothing requires you to stay present. Existing does not depend on attention. It continues even when attention drifts. even when words stop landing, even when thought dissolves into something indistinct. Just existing is already enough for the body to rest. Nothing more is required. There is a kind of quiet that does not ask to be understood. It does not arrive with clarity. It does not announce itself. It simply appears when explanation is no longer needed. You do not need to know why this quiet feels different. You do not need to name it. Naming belongs to waking. Here, quiet is enough without definition. The mind may still look for something to grasp, a reason, a meaning, a signal that says this is working, but this quiet offers none of that, and nothing is wrong. Explanation has stepped aside, not because it failed, but because it is no longer useful. Notice how little effort this quiet requires. You are not maintaining it. You are not protecting it. It exists on its own. Like darkness in a room after the lights are turned off, no one holds it in place. It simply remains. Thoughts may still appear at the edges of awareness. They do not demand attention. They arrive unfinished and leave the same way. There is no need to follow their beginning or their end. They do not connect to anything. They are not forming a story. The mind is no longer trying to explain itself to itself. That effort has loosened. What remains is a quiet that feels wide, not empty, just open, open without purpose. You do not need to fill this space. It does not ask to be filled. Even the idea of rest has softened. There is no goal here, no expectation of sleep. Sleep is not being invited. It comes when it comes. Quiet does not rush it. The body responds first. Breathing becomes subtle. Muscles rest without instruction. There is no sensation calling for attention. Everything settles at its own pace. You do not need to notice each change. Noticing is optional now. Awareness can drift. It can fade in and out without consequence. Nothing important happens if you stop listening to the words. They are not carrying information anymore. They are simply part of the quiet, like distant sound that blends into the night. You do not need to remember anything said here. Nothing is being taught. Nothing is being revealed. This quiet does not offer insight. It offers rest. Rest does not explain itself. It simply deepens when nothing interferes. If the mind reaches for explanation again, it will find none, and eventually it will stop reaching. That stopping is gentle. It is not an action. It is a release. The space between thoughts widens without effort. Silence becomes familiar, not noticeable, just present. You are no longer inside a process. There is no sequence to follow, no next step, just this quiet continuity that does not point anywhere. Words slow, pauses lengthen, meaning thins, and in that thinning, the body recognizes that it is safe to let go further. You do not need to stay awake for this. You do not need to listen carefully. Quiet without explanation does not depend on attention. It continues even as awareness softens and slips away. There is nothing to hold on to here, and because of that, nothing pulls you back. It may feel now as if the world itself has taken a small step back, not leaving, not disappearing, just no longer standing so close. The room is still here, the night is still moving forward, but the sense of being surrounded has softened. Edges feel farther away. Sounds do not press in. They drift. Even the idea of space changes slightly. There is more distance between things, more air. The world is not asking to be noticed. It is simply present at a respectful distance. You do not need to engage with it. You do not need to track what is happening beyond this moment. Nothing outside this space is approaching. Nothing is calling you back. The world knows how to wait. As it steps back, attention follows naturally. Not inward, not outward, just resting without direction. You may notice that objects feel less defined now. The room becomes an impression. The darkness becomes a field rather than a boundary. There is no need to locate yourself within it. Location no longer matters. Time behaves differently here. Moments do not stack. They spread. There is no clear sense of before or after, just a continuous presence that does not move quickly. The world does not measure this. It does not record it. Nothing is being logged. Nothing is being remembered. The body responds to this spaciousness. Weight settles downward. Support becomes more obvious. Gravity does the work you no longer need to do. Muscles yield without instruction. The body trusts that nothing is required of it. You are not being watched by the world. You are not expected to participate in it. It has stepped back far enough to allow rest. Even the idea of outside loses its importance. There is no inside either, just a quiet continuity where boundaries no longer ask to be recognized. If thoughts appear, they are softer now. They do not point anywhere. They rise and fall like distant movement that never comes close. You do not need to follow them. There is nothing to orient toward. The world remains steady without your attention. It does not change when you stop noticing it. This steadiness creates a deeper sense of safety. Nothing sudden happens here. Nothing interrupts. The world has stepped back into stillness, and in doing so, it allows you to step back as well, from effort, from awareness, from the need to be present. Presence is no longer required. The body continues. The night continues. Everything important is already happening on its own. You are free to drift, free to fade in and out of awareness. The world will remain exactly where it is. It does not follow you into sleep. It waits at a gentle distance, and that distance is enough to let rest deepen quietly. There is a point where you realize there is nothing left to carry, not because you put things down, not because something was released, but because nothing is being held anymore. No weight remains in the hands, no pressure remains in the chest, not lightness, just absence of load. You are not empty, you are simply unburdened. Even the idea of effort has faded. There is no sense of having arrived somewhere, no moment of relief to notice. The absence of weight does not announce itself. It simply exists. The body recognizes this first. There is no tension to counterbalance, no readiness to maintain. Muscles rest, not because they were told to, but because there is nothing left that requires support. Breathing continues without shape. It does not deepen. It does not slow deliberately. It just happens. No one is directing it. There is no sense of needing to stay aware. Awareness comes and goes without consequence. Nothing is lost when it fades. Nothing returns when it comes back. This state does not depend on continuity. It does not require that you remain present. The mind may notice a brief attempt to check what is missing, to look for something that should still be here, but there is nothing missing. There is simply nothing left to hold, no concern, no role, no internal posture. Even the sense of self feels lighter, not absent, just no longer defined by responsibility. There is no center that needs to be protected, no edge that needs to be guarded. Everything rests where it naturally falls. The body settles more deeply into support, not sinking, just aligning. Gravity completes its work without resistance. The surface beneath you carries everything without asking. You do not need to assist it. You may notice that thoughts have thinned to fragments, not sentences, not ideas, just faint movement that dissolves before forming. There is no story unfolding here. Nothing is being processed. Nothing is being remembered. Nothing is being prepared. The night does not need you to participate. It does not need your attention or your understanding. It holds everything without reference to you, and because of that, you can rest without being involved. This state does not feel dramatic. It feels ordinary, so ordinary that it barely registers, and that is why sleep approaches quietly, not as an event, not as a shift, just as a continuation of not carrying anything. You do not need to follow this. You do not need to stay with the words. They are no longer pointing. They are simply passing through the same quiet space you are resting in. Nothing left to carry means nothing left to manage. And when there is nothing to manage, the body does what it has always known how to do. It rests. There is no one here with you now, no presence to sense, no absence to notice, just rest. The body is already settled. Breathing continues on its own. Nothing is required. You do not need to stay aware. You do not need to listen carefully. The words no longer matter. They can drift past without being held. The night is steady. The space around you is quiet. Nothing enters. Nothing leaves. You are not waiting for sleep. You are already resting. Awareness can fade, return, fade again. It makes no difference. Everything necessary is already in place. There is no one to be for, no one to respond to, no one to remain available for, just this simple resting without reference, without effort, without direction. As the last words soften, sound can remain. Not something to follow, not something to understand, just sound. Let it pass through without attention. Let it continue as you rest. Nothing more is needed. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain, even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koya-san, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
So